Hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's call with Congressman Don Beyer. During this event, we'll be taking questions from constituents like you. To ask a question, please press star 3 on your telephone keypad to enter the question queue. You can also sign up for our newsletter by pressing star 6 at any time during this call. Again, press star 3 to ask a question and star 6 to subscribe to our newsletter. And with that, I'll turn it over to Congressman Beyer. Congressman, the floor is yours, sir.
Dirk, thank you very much. Good evening, and thank you all for tuning in and participating in tonight's Hellzone Town Hall. But before I dive into the Trump administration's barrage of questionable legal attacks on the federal workforce, I just want to take a moment to touch on last week's unbearable tragedy, the mid-air collision between American Eagle Flight 5342 and the U.S. Army helicopter at DCA. My office remains at the ready to assist and support the families affected by this tragedy, and there are a number. And also just to keep you updated on the response to this collision as it becomes available. Shortly after the crash, I hosted a meeting with our local city mayors and the county board chairs to discuss emergency response and recovery efforts and to outline federal support and the way forward, what we actually do with these training flights that's so close to the airport. And I really appreciate their commitment to ongoing collaboration. We've organized a vigil to remember those lost in this tragedy. It's going to be this Wednesday night, 2 nights from now at 5:30 p.m. at Rivergate City Park right on the river in Old Town Alexandria. This somber remembrance is of course, open for all to join. So I encourage you to visit beyer.house.gov for resources and updates on the crash. Subscribe to my newsletter, and as always, don't hesitate to give us a call. The number is 703-658-5403 if you or a loved one need family assistance related to this collision. But look, tonight, I want to give you the opportunity to share your experiences, concerns, and ask necessary questions regarding the avalanche of executive overreach coming out of the Trump administration that's aimed at the federal workforce that serves our country nobly every day, here in the Washington region and around the world. I don't think we've ever had as many incoming phone calls as we have in the last week. Many of you have called and emailed the office over the past 10 days, and I urge you to continue reaching out. We will try to get to every phone call ASAP. Your personal stories are critical for me and for my colleagues to better understand the dire situation, to give us the tools, the information we need to argue and to argue successfully against what Trump and Musk are trying to do. But tonight we're joined by the most recent former acting director of OPM, the U.S. Office of Personnel Management, Rob Schreiber. We found the most recent and relevant and talented OPM manager to help us answer your questions this evening. So Rob's an Alexandrian, and he's a true champion for the federal workforce. And right now he's continuing to fight for feds because he's the managing director of Civil Service Strong at Democracy Forward. Tomorrow morning I'm going to meet with the federal employee unions that represent many of you to discuss what they're hearing from you and the actions they have taken and plan on taking to respond, and where my colleagues and I can help. You know, like many of you, I'm completely outraged by the lies and the attacks on the work, character, and patriotism of feds and contractors that President Trump and Elon Musk have been spewing in order to justify their crusade against the very people who make our government run. This bile has been masked by actions that have targeted the civil service. The return to Schedule F, a return to office mandate on a completely unrealistic timeline designed to maximize attrition and chaos, unjustified terminations, placing blameless staff on administrative leave, and just overall creating a culture of fear and retaliation. I mentioned my office has received thousands of calls seeking guidance on handling the unprecedented and likely unlawful, quote-unquote, deferred resignation offer that was disseminated last week. Not only does this offer appear to violate the Administrative Leave Act of 2015, but this vague ultimatum offers no assurances of fulfillment or protections for those that choose to accept the terms. Look, and you can't, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that the President and Elon Musk's track record of upholding their commitments is lackluster at best. at best. And I'm furious that they are expecting federal employees to make such an important career decision in such a short time frame. My colleagues in the House and Senate have spoken out against taking this administration at their word, against accepting the deferred resignation. You didn't elect me to give you career advice. At the end of the day, you've got to make the decision that's best for you and your family. We completely respect that. But I just want you to know, this seems dubiously legal and a deliberate attempt to gut the civil service. Your work every day is essential to the functioning of the U.S. government. The Trump administration and his supporters who continuously attack the valuable work you do are out of touch with reality and seem to want to break the government to prove their delusional narrative that the government isn't functional and replace civil service with political cronies and business associates. Tonight, I'll try to address your questions and concerns the best I can with the minimal guidance we've been given. And unfortunately, when there are unqualified leaders at the helm of reforming efforts, there's going to be a lot more questions than answers. Letting a social media-addled, unelected billionaire who has little understanding of how our government laws work, let him dictate what government efficiency looks like, and let him have unfettered access to government information and funding structures is deeply troubling. Earlier today, I hosted a press conference with many of my House and Senate colleagues outside the USAID headquarters, and unfortunately, we were barred from entering the building. We're going to continue to shine a light on the manufacturing crisis unfolding across the government. I'm also paying close attention to the ongoing lawsuits being filed against these executive orders and actions. There are currently more than 20 different lawsuits challenging at least 11 executive orders. Finally, I'm working with my colleagues in the National Capital Region and the House Oversight and Government Reform Committees to best respond to the Trump-Musk anti-government efficiency agenda. These committees are led by Jerry Connolly and Jamie Raskin, others. If you have information that you believe would be useful to these efforts or wish to report waste, fraud, and abuse, please feel free to reach out to the Oversight Committee Democrats through the whistleblower tip line on their website. And remember, the whistleblower protection is pretty strong, and a protected disclosure is laid out very, very clearly. So you can do this anonymously. And given the current environment, for those that wish to remain anonymous while participating in tonight's town hall, we are happy to accommodate. For those that are willing to share their stories to shine light on the real human costs these policies have, we are ready to put you in touch with reporters. There's a lot of reporters who are eager to speak with you to boost awareness and raise the alarm, but only do this if you are comfortable. Look, I'm going to kick it over to Rob now, who can speak more about the legal efforts Democracy Forward is undertaking in response to the Trump administration's executive actions. I look forward to hearing from him on his next steps and any words of wisdom he has for the 80,000 federal employees in the 18th Congressional District as you navigate this new and perhaps hostile work environment. So Rob Shriver, over to you.
Thank you for being such a champion of working people in the 8th Congressional District. It's my honor to join you here tonight. As the Congressman mentioned, I now am working for Democracy Forward, which is an organization that uses the law to build collective power and advance a bold, vibrant democracy for all people. And I'm the leader of a new part of Democracy Forward called Civil Service Strong. You can look it up at civilservicestrong.org. Civil Service Strong is meant to provide resources to federal employees who are managing through all of the issues that have been coming out of the White House every day, it seems. So once again, you can go on to civilservicestrong.org, check out the resources that we have available there. You have a chance to ask questions so we can supplement them as we go along here, and we're going to be with you all the way. And the Congressman mentioned the litigation that Democracy Forward has been leading. I'm proud to let you all know, hot off the presses, at 5 o'clock today, a judge entered a temporary restraining order in a lawsuit Democracy Forward filed to prevent the Trump administration from freezing the federal grant money that is so critical to so many of our communities around the country. So that's just an example of the type of advocacy that Democracy Forward is bringing to these issues. I'm also really proud to be here as the outgoing director of the Office of Personnel Management. It's an agency that I have immense fondness for and am devastated to see what the Musk team is doing over there. I served 2 tours of duty at OPM, both in the Obama administration and then for the last 4 years in the Biden administration. And prior to that, I was a lawyer for the National Treasury Employees Union for 13 years. So the civil service is at the core of my entire career. And so I'm honored to be able to be here and participate with all of you and with the Congressman tonight, and happy to help in whatever way I can. Thanks very much, Congressman.
Rob, thanks so much for joining us. We couldn't have a better person who understands how the civil service employment works. So, Dirk, let me kick it back to you as we begin the input from our citizens.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. And to kick off the Q&A, we've got a question that was submitted anonymously by one of your constituents, and they say, OPM has sent us emails that say deferred resignation is valid, and if we accept, we won't have to work for the rest of the fiscal year. The emails also say we will keep accruing benefits. And the question, doesn't Congress have to authorize this? And is it legal?
Dirk, thank you very much, and thanks to whoever anonymously sent that in. Look, once again, I can't give you advice about your career, but let me make it clear, the deferred resignation offer violates the Administrative Leave Act of 2016, and that had bipartisan support. It actually passed in 2017 as part of the National Defense Authorization Act. So let me make it clear, Donald Trump, as president, signed the Administrative Leave Act that makes that the deferred resignation offer violates. Congress also, Part 2, we don't even have an approved budget for this fiscal year yet. We're almost halfway through. Congress has only appropriated agency funding through March 14th, so 5 or so 6 weeks from now. So there's, I want to believe we'll have a budget eventually, but there's no guarantee that those who accepted deferred resignation now will be able to stay on the payroll until September 30th. And then finally, OPM's FAQ, their frequently asked questions, provides no guidance on whether all those that choose deferred resignation will be accepted. So what happens if you accept it and then they don't accept you? What message does that send? Are you going to be the first one fired? Nor does the resignation or the FAQ clarify what protections you forfeit by signing the deferred resignation. I think virtually every Democratic congressional website says this is a bad deal. Don't do it. However, I'm sure there are individual family situations where it does make sense, but please go in with your eyes wide open. Rob, do you have anything to add to that?
I think that was very well said, Congressman. I would just add that, Congress appropriates money to agencies to carry out specific functions. It does not appropriate money to agencies to pay employees not to do their jobs. And then the other point would be that there are legitimate, valid ways for the administration to carry out the government restructuring that it appears intent on doing. There are rules that govern early retirements. There are rules that govern separation incentive payments. Employees have the protection of the laws and the regulations that implement those programs, and those are deals that you can count on. This deal, which is not envisioned in any law, is not subject to any regulation, is instead mirrored after a similar approach that Elon Musk took at Twitter. And I think folks should be aware that he was the subject of a class action lawsuit for not living up to that deal when he did it at Twitter.
Forewarned. Thank you, Rob, very much. Dirk, back to you.
Okay, let's get to the phones now. And again, if you've got a question you'd like to ask during this call, please press *3 on your telephone keypad. And right now, we've got an anonymous FEMA employee joining us on the line. Welcome to the call. You are live. Go ahead with your question, please.
Yes, hi, thank you. My question is, There've been Donald Trump seems to be picking on particular agencies, and I just wanted to know what kind of resources or recourses might be available for a federal government employee who is part of a reduction of force. And I just thought I'd ask what your opinions might be about that.
I'm happy. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Congressman.
No, go ahead, Rob. Perfect. Go ahead.
Well, first, thank you for your service with FEMA. Obviously, the American people depend greatly on the work that agency does day in and day out. Look, I think that reductions in force are complicated, and there are a lot of rules that apply when carrying out a reduction in force. And in my many years of experience in working with the civil service, I have seen agencies, even under the best of times, struggle to comply with the technical requirements of a reduction in force. In this situation where you have broad mandates being handed down from the White House, and then you have an interpretation of those mandates that is as broad as possible, I think there are lots of questions about the legitimacy of the reduction in force efforts that are to come. And I think it's really important that if you are subject to one of these reductions in force and you are a member of a bargaining unit, that you consult with your union representative about that, because you may have remedies under the union contract. And furthermore, if you're not part of the union, you can seek legal representation, and because there are often appeal rights for what's called the Merit System Protection Board, a special independent agency that's set up to handle federal employee claims of improper personnel actions and also prohibited personnel practices.
And let me just add to Rob's comments that the Maryland Department of Labor has put up a website specifically for you if you're part of a RIF or laid off. And just to reiterate, if you're part of the union, reach out to them, because they're working closely with us and they have lots and lots of those resources. And let's make it abundantly clear, you can't fire a civil service worker unless it's for cause. And you're specifically prohibited to do it for political retaliation. Kurt, back to you.
All right, next up we've got an anonymous federal employee in Alexandria asking about Elon Musk and the Treasury payment systems. Welcome to the call. You're live. Go ahead now. Hello there. As we go live to these callers, I will make note that you should hear a tone when we bring you live, and once you hear that tone, you are live on the call. So go ahead now. It looks like we don't have the audio right now from our caller. I'll go ahead.
Let me address that anyway, because we have a sense of his concern is about what's happening at Treasury with Elon Musk and his minions taking over the payment system. And it's extraordinarily concerning. I was on the phone with our Ways and Means Committee leadership for an hour this afternoon trying to figure out how best to address this. Well, what's abundantly clear is that you have a man who was not elected, who has not passed any security checks, who was not confirmed by the U.S. Senate, who, you know how hard it is to get to be a federal employee. It takes an average of a year. Coming in and throwing out the people who have managed that payment system, literally $6 trillion a year, our Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, all of our payrolls, including our military payroll. But even more than that, they now have access to our tax information. So our Social Security number, our bank, if you have your refunds or your money that you owe taken out of your bank directly, you know, the ABA numbers and your bank account numbers. This is a huge, huge risk, period, especially for someone who is so close to the Chinese Communist Party. It's just completely intolerable. We are looking at as many different ways we can to work with outside groups to prevent this, to get injunctions going and suits right away. And looking for any other way we can stop this. This is a great danger. And we have two other really important tools at our disposal. I mentioned before that we're still acting on a continuing resolution. I'm sure everyone on the call understands that. Well, I'm in a House right now that has 217 Republicans and 215 Democrats. And the Republicans are actually about three different parties right now. So they need Democratic votes to be able to advance our budget, keep the government open, keep what does now Donald Trump's government open. And then part two, we've already exceeded the debt limit. We're working on special measures right now. To raise the debt ceiling, they are absolutely going to have Democratic votes in the House and the Senate. So we have meaningful leverage, and we intend to use that leverage to the best of our ability to get Musk out of the payment system, out of all of our personal business. And Rob, I welcome you to add anything you like.
I think you covered it, Congressman. Thank you.
Dirk, back to you.
Thank you very much, Congressman. And I would like to remind everyone that the Congressman and his staff put out a very informative e-newsletter. At times like this, it's very important to stay informed. You can get enrolled in that this evening by pressing *6 on your telephone keypad. Again, get signed up to receive frequent updates from the Congressman and his staff by pressing *6. And next, there's a question of the legitimacy of this retirement option. And let's go live to that caller. Caller, you are now live with the Congressman. Go ahead to ask your question, please.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you very much. The question is, we have, as mentioned before, a number of emails going out, including a flurry today. I think I counted at least 4, many of which purport to support the legitimacy of this particular action, the deferred resignation, providing a sample agreement between the agency and the employee. It all seems kind of on the up and up, legitimate, but obviously there's a lot of questions regarding the reliability of this agreement. So the question is, can the federal government, can we hold it, if this offer is accepted, can we hold the federal government to account to enforce any such agreement and the offer? Thank you.
A very fair question. Let me kick it to Rob Shriver.
Yeah, so I think you're right to have skepticism about that. And I've seen many of these emails, and to me the question is, why are they trying so hard to get so many people to accept this so-called deal? I saw that they have sent out the template of an agreement. I guess my question would be, if they don't live up to that agreement, what is the vehicle for enforcing it? And also my question would be, even if there is a vehicle to enforce it, that takes a lot of resources, energy, effort. And I think sometimes you've seen a strategy from this president to try to wear people out through the judicial process in his private and professional dealings. So I'm very skeptical of both their ability legally to hold to the terms of the deal and of their word on this. And I would point back once again to the fact that there are normal procedures that could be used to accomplish the same goal that they are trying to accomplish, that are established in law, that are implemented in regulation, and that federal employees can count on. And so once again, I ask the question, why aren't they using those procedures? Why are they making up something new that is at best of questionable legal validity?
And this is Don. I would just have to add, look at Donald Trump's lifetime of business, and he has screwed people he's owed money to every single chance he's gotten. He's gone bankrupt, I believe, at 6 different times. There are many places he couldn't hold venues in the campaign this last year because he hadn't paid them from 8 years ago. I don't know why you would ever trust this man to follow through on a promise that he made financially. It's just not in his nature. Dirk, back to you.
Thank you very much, sir. And next we've got a federal contractor joining us. and concerned about a government agency that's not been vetted. You are now live on the call. Go ahead with your direct question, please.
Hi there. Thank you. So as stated, federal contractor but not employee. However, we do work closely with the Department of Energy, maintaining a system that contains certain nuclear information. And so our concern is, what do we do and how do we respond if these people from DOGE or whatever come banging on our door demanding access to systems when they've not gone through the proper clearances processes to get that system access?
I think it is a real concern because the vetting process, and again, this is Rob Schreiber here, the congressman may want to weigh in as well. The vetting process is not just a technical HR, annoyance that should be avoided. The vetting process checks for things like whether somebody is subject to blackmail, or whether somebody is a foreign agent, or whether they have issues with their character that make them unable to have responsibility for large financial systems or large data sets of personally identifiable and personal health information. These are important measures that have been not only implemented but strengthened over time to make sure that the American public was protected. And so I think that the short answer to your question is that you should consult with your security professionals at your agency and follow the rules that are in place. You've all had training about access to sensitive data and the rules around that and the mechanisms to report it if you think that those processes and rules are being violated. I would encourage you to follow those procedures.
Thank you, Rob. Back to you, Dirk.
Thank you very much, Congressman. And next up, we've got Lynn joining us as USAID on her mind. Lynn, go ahead with your question, please.
Yeah, good evening. First of all, thank you, Congressman, for your vigorous defense of USAID and the work that it does around the world earlier today. I am a USAID implementing partner and work throughout the international development and humanitarian community. I'm also a small business owner. My spouse is also engaged in the sector, and over the last 10 days, we have seen thousands and thousands of jobs lost. And while we're having important conversations about national security, national interests abroad, and how important this work is for our stature around the world, it is also having very real economic consequences in our households. I'm worried about the viability of the small business that I own and the 50 people who I am responsible for, who work for us, and then the larger ripple effects in the region. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are about the economic impact on households and the greater DMV region.
Lynn, thank you, and I'm very sorry for your small business and many, many others. At the press conference today in front of USAID at the Reagan Building, I heard story after story of contractors who had just lost their businesses, lost their livelihoods. We are fighting back as hard as we can on getting federal judges to lift this pause, this freeze, for many reasons. You mentioned that the economic impact, which would be very real, especially around here in Northern Virginia, to greater metropolitan Washington, but also because of the impact everywhere in the world. I thought Senator Brian Schatz made the very clear link today between instability anywhere in the world becomes instability here at home. That America is safest when the rest of the world is stable. And that we are literally, people are losing their lives to malaria, to Ebola, to pneumonia, to all kinds of things around the world without our money. And especially the PEPFAR money being cut and the people that are doing that. By the way, the people that are losing their jobs, your contractors overseas, are already in the most difficult places. I mean, they're not living the good life here in the United States. They're sacrificing a great deal, and to be cut off like this It's just unconscionable. So we're going to do everything we can to fight back. I think Gene Vindman, our new congressman from Prince William County, 25-year Army veteran, pointed out that when we give away our foreign aid money, when we lose that, which is less than 1% of the federal budget, we need to double or triple our military budget to make up for it from a national security perspective. So we're going to do our damnedest, Lynn, to try to get this money back. Because, as we put it very frankly, it's illegal what they're doing. This is money that went through the authorizing process. It went through the appropriations process, Democrats and Republicans, signed off by the Speaker of the House, by the Majority Leader of the Senate, and signed by the President of the United States. Elon Musk can't come in and say, oh, okay, now we're not going to spend it. That is unacceptable, and we'll do everything we can to fight back. And thank you, by the way, very much for your service. It's critical for America's future.
Now,
George, back to you.
Yes, sir. Next up, we've got an anonymous caller from Alexandria with the return to office on their mind. Caller, you are now live. Go ahead with your question, please.
Yes. So with the return to office, there's infrastructure that's needed at the offices that may no longer be there. Specifically, the Navy Yard, as a result of the land swap deal between the Navy and the District of Columbia, is in process of losing 1,500 parking spaces. So there will no longer be enough space for employees on the Navy Yard. And I'm sure there's many other examples there. So two parts to that. Can the land swap be undone? Or how soon can we get telework back so that we don't have to worry about the land swap?
Good. Mr. Shriver, off to you.
Yeah, I think if you don't mind, I'd like to level set on the whole telework, remote work question for a second, and it's not just because I don't know the answer to your land swap question, so somebody else might have to get back to you on that. But let's remember, folks, that telework was supported on a bipartisan basis for decades. It was actually Republican Frank Wolf from Virginia who sponsored the Telework Enhancement Act, 15 years ago. And let's also note that 54% of the federal government doesn't telework at all because of the nature of their job. They have to show up at the place of work every day. And then for the other 46% who do telework, they're in the office on average 3 out of every 5 days. So some of the data that you've seen out there that demonizes federal employees as, sitting at home and not working, first, it's just false, and second, it doesn't recognize how productive federal workers are on telework, including the fact that the federal workers kept the federal government going during the pandemic because they were able to accomplish so much on telework. I think that the policies of this administration, the one-size-fits-all approach, being jammed in here with such little notice, are going to be incredibly detrimental to the American people because they hurt federal workers. I'll give you one example. Cybersecurity is a profession that is in great demand across the entire economy. There aren't enough cyber workers to meet the needs in this American economy. The cybersecurity folks largely work from home, whether they work from government or work in the private sector or whatever. And so what is going to be the impact on the federal government cyber posture with this return to work mandate when cybersecurity professionals are in demand outside of the government and can get a job where they're allowed to continue to work from home? These are the types of considerations that I don't think this administration has taken into account. It's going to be the American people that hurt as a result. And I don't know when we'll be able to get telework back, but I think the negative impact of this decision is going to be felt by Americans, and hopefully that will help folks understand that this is a solution in search of a problem.
Rob, thank you very much. And let me just add that the way Trump and Musk are doing this is a completely unrealistic timeline. People have adapted to this and built their lives around the telework policies that are in place in terms of babysitting and in terms of commute schedules. They're going to return to offices that don't have desks, that don't have computers on them, the phones don't work. It's just completely unrealistic. By the way, I also want to point out that in the last 4 years, since one of the sad but true benefits of the COVID crisis was a surge in U.S. productivity per person. Why? It's because you get up and you don't have to take a shower. You don't even have to put on a coat and a tie or get in the car we have the second longest commute of any neighborhood in the United States and can start working right away. I mean, study after study has shown that people work harder at home than they do at work. And they're just moving in the wrong direction. And I agree with Rob. We need to fight to keep telework. And when you think about the knowledge-based jobs of the future, they overwhelmingly are jobs that are be filled by people who want to work at home. And we're going to rob the federal government of our best and brightest. Dirk, please proceed.
Thank you, sir. We're moving on to another anonymous caller out of Arlington. You are live to talk about your concern over the legality of firing federal workers. Go ahead with your question, please.
Hello. Thank you for having the town hall. I'm a federal contractor and my husband's a federal employee. And obviously the last few weeks have been just devastating for federal workers. And everyone's afraid of what's still to come. And I'm wondering what Congress is doing to challenge the legality of firing workers, putting workers on administrative leave when they haven't done anything wrong. All they've done is do their job. And also, what is the local congressional delegation doing to stand up for federal employees who it seems like everyone is demonizing now, and yet these people have, in many cases, given up opportunities in the private sector that might pay more, but they believe in their federal mission and in federal service.
Yes, thank you. You make a very important point. Every study I've seen in my adult life shows that a federal employee gives up a significant amount of annual and lifetime income to work in public service. And you do it because you have a mission, because you're not trying to maximize how much money you can die with. To that end, Jerry Connolly, my dear friend and ranking member on the Oversight Committee, has introduced the Saving the Civil Service Act, and I'm an original co-sponsor with them. It is a good bill. We're going to try to get as many Republicans on it as we can. I don't want to be Pollyanna and think that Speaker Mike Johnson will put it on the floor anytime soon, but we're trying to do what we can. And we do have the 2025 budget that's still not passed yet as a tool to try to protect people from being fired. Rob, can you talk about the legal aspects?
I sure can. And I think the congressman made an important point earlier tonight when he said, remember that civil servants have due process protections. Once you complete your probationary period, you can't be fired for partisan political reasons. There is a range of legal remedies that are available to federal employees who are subjected to illegal adverse personnel actions, prohibited personnel practices, and the such. I would, again, always urge you to start, if you happen to be a member of a bargaining unit, to start with your union representative. There is information on the civilservicestrong.org website about the legal rights that are available to folks if you find yourself in this position. A lot of the legal challenges that come up in this area for individuals need to go through that administrative process that's set up that leads to an appeal before the Merit System Protection Board. I mentioned that before. But there also are organizations like Democracy Forward who are looking at whether there is litigation that can be brought in the federal district courts to try to stop these actions before they take place. So that's something to look out for as well. Again, there'll be information on civilservicestrong.org about any of those lawsuits that may affect you. But just be aware that even if you are a probationary employee, they still cannot take action against you for partisan political reasons to retaliate against you as a whistleblower for discriminatory reasons, those would all be prohibited personnel practices. And even as a probationary employee, you can file a complaint with the Office of Special Counsel, and they have the ability to investigate those.
Thank you, Rob, very much. Dirk, back to you.
Quick reminder for everybody that's on the line with us, if you'd like to get signed up for the Congressman's e-newsletter and stay informed, please press star 6 on your telephone keypad to get enrolled. Again, the Congressman and his staff put out a very informative and frequent e-newsletter. You can press star 6 to get enrolled in that. Next up, we've got Donna in Alexandria. Donna, you're live on the line. Go ahead with your question, please.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Congressman Byer, and also you as well. I'm a contractor to the government, and I also work at an Navy Yard. And not only do we have a parking issue, but we also have spaces in our place, in our SCIF, that are short. We're short-staffed. I should say we're hoteling, in other words. So we also have an issue with telework. But I want to know also about how a person who is not a federal employee, who is just someone like myself without top secret clearance, can get into a SCIF, who can get into PII, how they're allowing him access to PII, which is, of course, our personal identification information. And I also have a colleague that is on maternity leave. Unfortunately, she doesn't have a year as a federal employee. So she, of course, is on probation, and she stands to be on the list. So my question to you both is, if you can explain how Musk is getting away with all this and not being, I don't want to use the word arrested, but basically shown the door. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. Those are very hard questions. On the first part, the new Secretary of the Treasury, Bessent, has given permission to Trump and his, the young men that he is working for him, to come into the Treasury Department to fire the people that were leading that payment system and give them access. And as near as we can tell, because they have never passed any security checks, and never been confirmed, certainly never been elected, this should be completely illegal. I know when I've served on Ways and Means for 6 years now, I think, whenever we have the very, very occasional opportunity to look at a tax return, it's usually done with lots of lawyering ahead of time. Usually only the chairman of the committee or the ranking member can look at it, and can never speak of it. So the notion that a couple of young people and Donald Trump and Elon Musk can look at it is just unconscionable. By the way, if you saw Trump's press avail this afternoon, he seemed clueless at what Musk was doing. He was just making stuff up. It seems to be this is one of the things where he's just let Musk run amok without any adult supervision whatsoever. In the meantime, what do we do about it? In the Congress, on our Ways and Means Committee, which has jurisdiction over PII, your tax returns, we're trying to fight any legal solutions we can to get Musk and his people out of there. And let me kick it to Rob for the questions about the pregnancy.
Yes, thank you, Congressman. I would just add on the point about your friend who's off on maternity leave that, as I mentioned, even for probationary employees, you have rights against being mistreated based on partisan political influence or whistleblower retaliation or on the basis of discrimination. And so in the event that somebody who's a probationary employee would be terminated based on the fact that they were on maternity leave, for example, that would be a basis to bring a discrimination complaint. And again, I think in addition to the Office of Special Counsel, in that situation, you would look at your rights under the Equal Employment Opportunity Laws and there should be a process for an employee who experiences that kind of discrimination to file an EEO complaint.
Thanks, Rob. Dirk, you're in charge.
All right, sir. Thank you very much. And we've got an anonymous caller in Alexandria who's got the Schedule S on their mind. Caller, you are live. Go ahead with your question, please.
Yes, thank you, and thank you for this town hall. My question deals with the new executive order dealing with formerly Schedule F, now referred to as Schedule Policy Career, and the roughly 13-page guidance that has been issued relative to that. When you read that guidance, it becomes very clear that a vast swath of general service employees can and likely will be recategorized into this new category of Schedule Policy Career, which then in turn makes them employees with essentially no civil service protections, as I understand it. And I'm wondering what can be done to stop that from happening, because I think that's the next shoe to drop once this deferred resignation falls flat. This will be the next thing to happen, and then they can just remove a vast swath of employees that way. And I'm hoping that it can be stopped.
Yeah, I'm very much hoping it can be stopped too. I thought this was one of the most important of the messages we tried to deliver during the campaign last year, is that Donald Trump had instituted Schedule F just before he left office, December of 2020, and we knew that it would come back with a vengeance, and it has. While he was out in the first few years of the Biden administration, we passed a law in the House prohibiting Schedule F, making it impossible. Sadly, it did not pass the Senate, where you have to have 60 votes. So we've tried a legal defense, a congressional defense, inadequately so far. Right now, all we can do is work closely with the unions, with people like Rob Shriver and Democracy Forward, and just fight back. It is terrible public policy. We go back to the late 19th century when the Pendleton Act was passed. That was to take away all the cronyism and the political favoritism in the federal government. Back to the days of Andrew Jackson. And you just imagine right now, his Schedule F before was 50,000 people. He's talked to numbers as high as 100,000. But who are they going to be? They're going to be your top GS 14, 15, 16, your SES people, your managers, your people that have 20 and 30 years of experience, your vast wealth of knowledge on how to run a very good government. And you're going to lose the people that make this the best country in the world. We worry about it because of the economic impact. Most of those people are in the greater metropolitan Washington area. Montgomery County, Prince George's County, all of Northern Virginia. So that will be terrible for us in the short run, but even worse for the government, worse for the world. I can't promise you exactly how we're going to vanquish this, but I promise you we are going to try in every way possible. And I offer Rob any opportunity to boost that.
Well, thank you, Congressman. This is near and dear to my heart because while I was the acting director of OPM, we issued a regulation that went through the formal notice and comment process. So when you make major policy changes like this, you're supposed to go through a public process where you provide notice and you give the public a chance to weigh in, and then you address those comments. And we did that, and we issued a regulation that strengthened civil service protection to guard against an implementation of a new Schedule F. The guidance that came out from the White House purports to render inoperable portions of that OPM regulation. So the good news is that I can tell you as a result of the way that they've gone about this, we filed 2 lawsuits last week to try to block implementation of the new Schedule PC. So we are fighting it in the courts. And then I think another thing that's important that we can all do a better job of is explaining to the American people, just like the Congressman does, about why this is such a bad idea, because people hear, oh, you're just being made an at-will employee. Well, I'm in the private sector. I'm at-will. Why is that a problem? Well, it's a problem because those civil service protections exist so that career civil servants can offer their honest, candid feedback. They can push back against decisions that they think are illegal, and they can feel like they can operate in their job based on their oath to the Constitution and the mission of the agency, and not based on some partisan loyalty. So when Americans go to the grocery store and purchase hamburger meat, they want to make sure that that meat was inspected by somebody who was hired because they know what they're doing and not based on who they voted for. Or when you apply for a small business loan, you want that loan to be considered based on its merit and not based on any political donations you may have made. And when you have wildland fires raging around your home, you want to make sure those federal resources are allocated based on the weather and the science and the evidence, and not on the political leanings of the neighborhood that you live in. So those are the consequences of these very technical HR-sounding things like Schedule F or Schedule PC. And the more that we can tell our friends and neighbors about what the real-world impact will be on Americans, I think the stronger our case is.
Thank you, Rob. That's excellent. Let me just add two things. When you make the top 50,000 or 100,000 federal employees serve at the will of the president, that they're political employees, you can get wild swings every 4 years. There's a new president. It's tough enough in a very bipartisan, very partisan two-party system to have the swings to the left and then back to the right. But can you imagine if the entire federal government does that? And then also think about it. When you're a political appointee, you know you're going to be there for 4 years. You possibly could spend a lot of that time thinking about what's your next job going to be and using your federal service to line your own nest for when the next president comes in and you lose your job, as opposed to people who are literally committed to public service for most of their lives. News just in before we go back to Dirk. We just got news that two federal employee unions, AFG and SEIU, have filed suit tonight seeking to block DOE's access to those Treasury Department payment database. Relevant to the last couple of questions, there are good people trying to do good things to stop and get Trump out of the Treasury Department ASAP. Dirk, off to you.
Next up, we've got Karen in Alexandria joining us. Karen, you're live on the line. Go ahead with your question, please.
Hi, thanks so much for your time this evening. As a federal employee who is currently on administrative leave due to the DEI executive memo and executive order, this is an incredibly stressful time. And I haven't received any guidance from my agency. I'm also a probationary employee, just to put, 2 notches in that. So it sounds like as an accepted employee, I still may have some protection, and maybe some options available to me if that reduction in force is fully implemented. That memo came out last week, but I haven't received any guidance yet. But I just wanted to see if anybody had any insight into what may be going on with those of us still waiting to hear back on the risk.
Mr. Shriver?
Thank you, Congressman. So I think, as I mentioned a little earlier, these reduction in forces are they're complex HR matters to pull off. And what I have seen in talking to people across government is that agencies have taken a very broad interpretation of who works on DEI. And so people who have been put on administrative leave have included, for example, folks who maybe just took a training that was related to DEI, or folks who volunteered as a collateral duty to work on an interagency council that maybe worked on DEI matters, or Pathways recent graduates or PMS who maybe spent a tour of duty in a DEI office but then moved on to other work, and people who worked in DEI maybe in November and then moved into other jobs after that, so they no longer work on DEI. I think that reach of this policy is highly questionable. And when you move from the administrative leave phase to the actual reduction in force phase, I think that the agencies are having to come to grips with the fact that such a wide swath approach is not necessarily defensible. So that might be one reason why folks are on administrative leave and waiting to hear what happens next. And also, thank you. I'm glad you heard me that probationary employees shouldn't just surrender. If you feel like you're being subject to mistreatment based on discrimination or partisan politics or whistleblowing, that you do have those rights. And even through a reduction in force, there are procedures the agency needs to follow to carry that out correctly, and they're likely going to be challenged before the Merit System Protection Board.
Thank you, Rob. And Karen, thank you, by the way, for your service. Good luck. We hope it works out for you. And on DEI, I thought one of the saddest press conferences I've seen in a while was Donald Trump the other day on the plane crash, where the first 4 minutes he was sober and thoughtful and expressing sorrow, and immediately shifted to blaming everything on DEI, which is absolutely crazy and unfounded. And somehow he thinks that whatever wrong track is going on in America is somehow because we are trying to include people from diverse backgrounds in our economic progress. You know, it's a diversion from what's really going on, which is massive tax cuts for the billionaires and the millionaires and the corporations. He's trying to distract us from this massive shift of wealth from the working men and women of America to his friends. And the DEI is a red herring. In the meantime, it's hurting a lot of really good people, and we're going to fight for them as best we possibly can. Dirk, back to you.
So looking at the clock, it looks like we have time for just one more question, and that honor goes to Carice. Carice, you're live on the call. Go ahead with your question, please.
Hi. My question for the representative is I am an employee at the FBI, as is my spouse, and there's a lot of I think fear going on about the reprisal against employees at the FBI who have been involved in January 6th in the Mar-a-Lago documents case. So my question is what is the representative and others in Congress doing to protect the FBI, all people who are doing their jobs for the right reason to protect the American people and uphold the Constitution and do things by the rule of law? Thank you.
Carice, thank you very much. And thank you and your husband for your public service. We are trying to raise hell. We will use the power of the budget to do what we can to protect those. It is unconscionable, and I think violates the basic sense of fairness for most Americans that a civil servant, an FBI agent, or a Justice Department attorney who is assigned to work on a specific case can be fired because he was doing his or her job. It's just absolutely not right. And I think we start by denying Kash Patel the FBI directorship. And this is a guy who has promised again and again on national TV to seek vengeance on his enemies and Donald Trump's enemies. It's the last person we need to uphold the integrity of the FBI. And I'm hoping that we will get enough Republican senators to peel off and deny him that. In the meantime, Carice, we will do everything we can think of to try to protect those FBI agents. Who, by the way, once again, back to Rob's comments, they can't and shouldn't be fired for doing their job. And Rob, let me let you finish with your much better insights on this.
No, I couldn't agree more, and I think it's a really bad precedent for the government to have a new administration come in, and because they didn't like things that the prior political leadership did, to take it out on the career employees. And I think it's really dangerous going forward when career employees are trying to figure out how they can do their job in a world where they're potentially going to be targeted if the next administration comes in and doesn't like the policies of the previous administration. And so I think, the FBI agents in particular, they're making us, the administration is making us all less safe by taking these actions. It's putting our safety as a country and as a population at risk, and it's a bad deal for all of us.
Rob, thank you very much. We're at the end of the hour. I just want to thank all of you for hanging in there with us. Thank you for your ideas. Thank you for expressing your very real concerns. We've been taking very good notes, and we'll try to fight as hard as we can in any way we can. Send us your ideas, please don't hesitate to call or send an email. We try to answer everyone. And please be hopeful. Life is long. These are really dark times. They're the worst 2 weeks I've ever been in Congress. I'm sure it is for many, many of you. But it is going to get better. I don't tell you when, but you can't lead without public sentiment. And the public sentiment is inevitably going to turn against someone who is Musk and Trump, who is about themselves rather than about serving and loving and taking care of the American people. If anything, Trump is elected to fight inflation. And so far he's done absolutely nothing, including those stupid tariffs on two of our closest friends and allies, Mexico and Canada. Nothing that will bring prices down or keep them from going up. In the meantime, we're going to keep trying to work for the honest men and women, families of America going to work hard every day. Please stay in touch. We'll do this again soon. And thank you very much. If you're on this call, you almost certainly have dedicated your life to public service. And we are deeply grateful. And Rob Schreiber, thank you. You're a great partner. And thanks for all you're doing for these good folks. Good night to all of you. Thank you.
Echoing those words of thanks, thank you for joining us on tonight's live telephone town hall with Congressman Don Beyer. Now, to get signed up for that e-newsletter as we round out this call, just wait for the tone. And after you hear that tone, please speak slowly and give us your name and email address, and we will get you signed up to receive the Congressman's e-newsletter. So thanks again for participating in this evening's call. We hope you stay healthy and safe and have a wonderful evening. Good night, everyone.